So the mid-90s became a really weird time for rock and roll because with the rise of Nirvana and grunge rock, suddenly counterculture became something that was accepted and adapted by the mainstream. Um, you know, Suddenly you had, the same flannel shirt that you got for $5 at the thrift store was now being sold in a department store for $50. And, all the top designers were doing, just this, really fake, contrived version of grunge on the runways. Like the same people that used to bully you and make fun of you at school for wearing Doc Martens or, ripped jeans and dog chains and things like that, now it was suddenly okay. Like now the, the trendies and the normies were wearing Doc Martens. And, and I think part of that was because you didn't have to really, you didn't have to look different to be a grunge fan. You were able to kind of, it was a very like safe zone for people that didn't really understand the counterculture or what the songs were about or what the scene was about. You could be a jock and look like Kurt Cobain. You could be a normie and listen to Nirvana, and it was accepted now. And I think like those of us that were, these diehard like rock and roll kids felt a little bit betrayed by that. Because, and then the concert scene itself was also starting to change. It was like a very weird time. I remember going to see Nirvana in '93, and like I was just, I was unrelenting. Like I showed up in a bright fuchsia thrift store frock, and I was hanging out with Sting's son, Joe, who I had met over the summer, and he was like in a full dress. We're like smoking pot in front of the venue, just like, hey, fuck it, rock and roll. We're like trying not to let the glamour of things die. But Kurt Cobain that night was like, I'm not doing an after show. If anyone asks me for an autograph, I won't play. So it was really kind of a weird vibe because now when you went to rock shows, it used to be that almost everybody was dressed up. And then like when grunge hit, it was kind of like, it was like 50-50, and then it sort of just started like dwindling more and more and more to where like the concert wasn't really, it didn't really feel much like a special event anymore. Because people were just, wearing jeans and flannels. So the scene got a little bit boring, and the vibe very much changed. And then of course, that following year, then Kurt Cobain died, and that was, tragic for everybody. Because he did write some great songs, and, despite our aversion to, the lack of glamour, we still, related to the music. So, and that was just, very traumatizing to lose, the role model of, the decade when you're in high school. I'll never forget that day that it came on the news that they'd found his body in Seattle, because I was literally getting ready for a Pantera show. I was going to see Pantera that night, and I ended up hanging out with them after, and hanging out with Dimebag Darrell, who at this time wasn't even Dimebag Darrell. He was Diamond Darrell, and I don't remember what I said. But I connected with him, and he gave me a guitar pick, which I still have, and it says Diamond Darrell on it. So it's kind of an amazing collector's item because it was so old. It was before he was even using the name Dimebag. And then a couple weeks later at that same venue, I went to see Smashing Pumpkins, and once again, I'm like, I'm not, giving up, I'm not giving up my, my subcultural ways or, my style. Like I'm still representing, I don't care if the rest of the kids are, came straight from school and are in their jeans and sneakers. I'm in, black velvet hot pants and like a silver glittery, thrift store shirt. And like, I actually like made my makeup. Like, I made my lipstick, which is, I tried to recreate the color, but it was very much like this. It was like a silver purple that I actually made out of like eyeshadow and lip balm, because I wanted to have a look that nobody else had. And I was in the front row, and yeah, it was a very, very weird, like I said, very weird energy, you know, when you mixed in people that weren't really there for the right reasons. They weren't really there for the music. They were just kind of almost like they didn't really know why they were there. So instead of it being like a celebration and a place to like meet like-minded people or, you know, talk about things, it was almost like being at school. And the crowd was very rude to the band. I do remember that, you know, because I was in the front row and, like, me and my friend, you know, we were obviously, like, you know, cheering and, you know, dancing and all that, but the majority of the crowd, you know, it was like they didn't, you know, it's like they didn't have any excitement or appreciation for the band. And, you know, and it was already a rough time because Kurt Cobain had just died, like, 2 weeks ago. So it's like, you know, come on, guys, you know, I mean, it's like already sort of a depressing time, you know, we're supposed to be here sort of rejoicing in the rock and roll that we have left, like, let's have some fun, and you know, like, for lack of a better word, the majority of the crowd were posers, and Billy Corgan, you know, I don't know what exactly was going on with him that night, other than just, you know, everything that was already going on with all of us at that time. But, you know, mid-show, you know, he started getting very irritated, and he started making comments about the way that the crowd was, you know, basically just everything that I said. And you know, he was just becoming very, very agitated, and he didn't want to be there anymore. And he got on the microphone, and he said, for all of you out there, you know, to the ones out there that get it, thank you. And to everybody else, fuck you, because you never will. This song is for you guys. And they launched into the first chords of Today, which was, you know, their big hit single at the time. And before he even started singing the first verse, he threw his guitar down. Like, it was literally like, like, bam, threw the guitar down and walked off stage. And, you know, for like a couple seconds, everyone, you know, those who were even paying attention were kind of like, is this part of the show? Was this, you know, what? And then the house lights come on, and it's like, it's over. He had quit in the middle, you know, he had literally, like, he threw down his guitar and quit in the middle of the show. So, you know, and it was bizarre, because, like, half the audience didn't even seem to realize that that is what occurred. Probably because they weren't, you know, they were too busy, like, drinking beer and, like, you know, mock slam dancing, to even, like, pay attention to, you know, to what the singer was saying in between songs. And then the people that did notice were just kind of like, hey, what happened? Like, we want our money back. Like, what's going on? It's like half a show. And I was 17 at the time. And I you know, I just, you know, I hadn't tried to get a backstage pass or anything like that before the show. But, I just felt like there was just something in me that I was like, this is kind of reminds me of how Kurt was acting a couple, you know, like, you know, last year. But even, like, more so, like, I don't know, there was something in me that just said, like, this isn't just, an antic or a tantrum, there's something very wrong. So I went around back to the venue. I found the buses, and I went around back to the venue, and I waited. And I waited for a long time. I don't remember how long, but it was hours. Because, you know, there was a group of other kids waiting too, you know, trying to get their autographs or whatever, by the bus. But as the hours went on, you know, more and more people just gave up and left. And then, like, we saw the rest of the band come out, and they got in a van and left. So then the majority kids really took off. But Billy hadn't come out yet, so I'm like, I'm staying. I'm staying until I see him and make sure that everything's okay. What I thought I was going to do about it, but coincidentally, I actually did, I guess, kind of do something positive about it, so I'm grateful that I did stick around. But, there was only maybe I don't even think there was 10 people left, waiting, hoping to see him. It was maybe 8. It was me and my friend and maybe a couple other, couples of kids. So he comes walking out and his head is down. And the other kids were like, "Oh, hey, Billy, great job tonight. What great show." And I'm thinking, are you guys retarded? He quit in the middle of the show. Obviously he doesn't think he did a good job. You're just, you're gonna piss him off more. What's wrong with you? And of course, he's, you can just, see the disdain. He's just, beelining straight, past them and, just trying to get on the bus as quickly as possible and is just looking miserable. And, he has one foot on the bus. When I say, "Billy, I'm really sorry about the way things turned out tonight. We're not all like that. I just want you to know." And he turned around, he stopped in his tracks. It's so dramatic remembering it, but it really was like this. It really was a kind of a cool rock and roll moment because, it was, it was dark. It was the dark parking lot, and I think it was a full moon, or I do remember I don't know if it was quite a full moon, but I do remember the moonlight being, it kind of shining down and reflecting off the chrome side of the bus, and and just this emotional rock star coming out, and I didn't think he was gonna, I didn't think there was anything I could say to console him. But I just kind of blurted this out, and he literally stopped dead in his tracks, 1 foot on the bus, turned around and collapsed into my arms, trembling, and yeah, he was kind of crying. I don't know if there were tears coming out, but he was shaking. He was shaking, and he was he was very clearly upset, and he whispered, "I know," and he kissed me on the cheek. And that was the first rock star that ever kissed me. It was very, very innocent. He kissed me on the cheek, and then he stopped and signed the autographs for all the kids that were waiting. And I didn't ask for an autograph because that's not what I was there for. I was there just to, to give him a hug and make sure that he was okay. So after he signed their autographs, he gave me his pen, which I still have. And, and then he went on his way and he left, and the kids were like, "Oh, you saved the day, thank you, da da da." And I was just sort of in shock, I was like, wow, that was intense. But yeah. And then all these years later, we met again on Twitter, and we talked a little bit, and he was upset about some stuff that was happening. He was upset again about some things that going on with fans, and I tweeted to him. I was like, "Just remember, Billy, we're not all like that. I'm still the girl that has your pen and not your name." And he favorited it. So it was kind of cute, and then we had talked a little bit back and forth. And then, one day I was processing some unrelated things, and I, kind of went off on him, and I felt really bad because he, shortly after deactivated his Twitter, And I felt really, really bad because, on Twitter you can't, or on social media in general, you can't tell that one of the dangers with it is you can't tell if people are serious or how they really mean things sometimes because you can't hear their tone. And I wasn't like really mad at him. I was just processing like, my entire life pretty much, and kind of like, he sort of triggered like a bad memory when I said something, and I don't know if he like left Twitter because of just that. It was probably like a lot of things, I assume, but I felt really bad because it was like right after, I had kind of yelled at him. So I felt really bad, and I wrote a song for him called I'm Sorry, Billy Corgan, which was about our first time meeting. And I made a little YouTube video playing it, hoping that he would see it, to kind of let him know, that I'm sorry, for yelling at him, but also to kind of remind him that like, hey, I'm still that girl, I'll always be your friend, and, I'm sorry. So like, don't ever forget, don't ever forget those, don't ever forget those good moments. But yeah, and then he came back on Twitter. So I was like, phew, we don't really talk anymore, but I'm just glad to know that he's doing okay. And I had also gotten a chance to say, I'm glad that I was there for you that night, and I'm glad that we're both still here, and he had favorited it. So it was kind of cool to have those little connections with people. And I think the moral of the story is, if you care, if you really do care about people, like, you never know what effect, you never know, like, you might think that you're insignificant or that something that you say or do is really insignificant, but for all you know, that thing could be saving somebody's life. So never hesitate to tell people how you feel, or to show them appreciation, or, encourage them to keep going and to keep just being like the best person that they can be. Anyway, so that's it. So make sure you stick around and subscribe, because you never can tell what I'm going to tell on Rock and Roll Is My Religion.